My name is Paula, and I'm 32 years old. The morning it all began, I was still half asleep when someone started pounding on my front door like the world was ending. The sun hadn't even risen yet, and for a second I thought I was dreaming until I heard my father's voice call my name. When I opened the door there, they were my parents. Martha and David standing on my small porch, surrounded by 4 heavy suitcases. My mother's hair was perfectly styled, and her nails glimmered with a fresh coat of polish that caught the morning light. My father's suit jacket looked recently pressed. The sight made no sense. "Paula," my dad said in a low voice, we don't have a home anymore." For a moment, the words didn't register. My parents. The same people who hosted dinner parties every Sunday, who bragged about their retirement plans, who owned a tidy suburban house in another state. They looked exhausted, or maybe just guilty. I moved aside silently, and they stepped in, dragging their luggage across my narrow hallway. The clatter echoed in the small space that had been mine alone since the divorce. I led them into the living room. "Sit," I said softly. "Tell me what happened." Mom pressed her palms together and took a shaky breath. "Your father's business, it collapsed. And then there was a lawsuit from his partner, a liar who forged documents. We lost everything." Dad nodded gravely. "I paid every debt, every cent. But that man, he had a lawyer who twisted everything. The judge ruled against me. We had to sell the house." My mind buzzed. I wanted to believe them, but something about their voices felt rehearsed. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. I could have helped, at least emotionally. Mom sighed, tilting her head with that familiar mix of pity and control. "You had enough on your plate with the divorce, sweetheart. We didn't want to burden you." I bit my tongue. She was right. 4 months ago, my marriage had imploded after years of slow decay. My ex got the countryside house. I got this modest one-story home in the city, plus the silence that followed. But still, they could have called. They always did before, even for minor problems like a leaking faucet. The air in the room grew thick. My mother's eyes darted toward the kitchen. "You haven't eaten, have you? Let me make us some coffee." "Sure," I said, forcing a smile. As she walked away, I noticed her diamond earrings. My gut twisted. While the coffee machine hummed, my father cleared his throat. "It's temporary. We'll find a rental place soon. Maybe stay a month, 2 at most." Of course, I said automatically, though. A small alarm bell rang in my head. "You can use the guest room." He nodded with visible relief. We drank coffee in silence. Mom talked about the long drive, about traffic, about the weather. Anything except the disaster they had supposedly survived. When she laughed at one of Dad's jokes, it felt eerily normal. Too normal. After they went to unpack, I stared at the steam rising from my cup. My house suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in. That evening, I peeked into the guest room. My parents' suitcases were open. Inside, I saw neatly folded clothes, designer labels I recognized, and a shopping bag from an upscale boutique downtown. My stomach tightened. Maybe they'd brought things they owned before the sale, I told myself. Maybe they hadn't sold everything. Still, something didn't add up. Over the next few days, their behavior only deepened the unease. They woke up early, went on cheerful walks around the neighborhood, came back laughing like tourists. Mom asked me if there were any nice restaurants nearby. Dad watched comedies late into the night, roaring with laughter that echoed down the hall. I wanted to ask again about the lawsuit, but every time I tried, Mom brushed it off. "It's all in the past now," she'd say, smiling faintly. "We're just trying to move forward." But how were they moving forward so easily after losing everything? One afternoon, I caught a glimpse of her phone screen while she was texting. The wallpaper was a photo of Kayla, my younger sister, standing in front of a brand new apartment building. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. Kayla, the golden child, the one who'd always gotten the best of everything there. She was smiling in front of something expensive. That night, Mom came home holding glossy shopping bags. "We stopped by the mall," she said breezily. "There was a sale." I stared at the labels. None of them ever went on sale. She noticed my silence and raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Nothing," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Just surprised you're shopping right now." Her tone cooled instantly. "Losing everything doesn't mean we stop living, Paula. Don't be dramatic." I looked away, my jaw tightening. She had always known how to make me feel unreasonable. Later, as I lay in bed, the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me, I replayed every detail of their story. The timing, the way their eyes avoided mine, the odd calm in their voices. They hadn't told me something, or maybe everything they'd said was a lie. Outside, the city lights flickered through my curtains, blinking like quiet warnings. The next morning, when they went out for a walk, I checked the guest room again. A receipt stuck out from one of the shopping bags. I pulled it out. It was dated yesterday, 2 designer jackets, 1 handbag, total cost $890. I stared at it, a chill crawling up my neck. People who'd just sold their house to pay debts didn't spend nearly $1,000 on clothes. When I heard their laughter at the front door moments later, I slipped the receipt into my pocket and smiled as they entered. But inside, my decision was already forming. I needed the truth, and I'd find it one way or another. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the faint rhythm of my parents' laughter seeping through the wall, their voices light, careless. How could they sound so calm after losing everything? I turned over, staring at the dark ceiling, and felt the familiar ache of old memories. Kayla at 12, crying over a broken doll, while I at 16 was scolded for not giving her mine. It had always been that way. Kayla was the baby, the treasure. I was the responsible one, the one who didn't need comforting. I got up, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at my reflection in the kitchen window. My face looked tired, pale, and older than 32. Divorce did that to you, and so did betrayal, especially from people you were raised to trust. By morning, I had made a decision. If they wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. I started with Aunt Patricia. She was my dad's sister and the unofficial family broadcaster. She knew everything about everyone, not because people confided in her, but because she had ways of finding out. When she picked up, her voice came through bright and chatty, the way it always did. "Paula, it's been ages. How's single life treating you?" "I'm managing," I said flatly. "Listen, I need to ask you something." "What's wrong? You sound serious." "Do you know anything about a lawsuit against Dad? Some partner he worked with?" There was a pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end, a faint rustle of paper. "A lawsuit?" "No, dear. I don't think so. I'd have heard something like that." I closed my eyes. "You're sure?" "Absolutely. But I do know one thing, your parents sold their house a while back. That part's true." I straightened up. "When? 2 months ago, maybe?" "Oh, and your sister Kayla. She bought herself an apartment around the same time. Isn't that funny?" My stomach dropped. "She bought what?" "An apartment. 2 bedrooms, I think. I saw the photos she posted in our family group chat. Gorgeous kitchen, granite counters." Patricia chuckled softly. "Your parents must be so proud of her." I didn't respond. The silence stretched heavy and cold. "Paula." "Yeah," I said, finally forcing my voice steady. "Thanks, Aunt Patricia. That's really helpful." After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The city outside buzzed faintly through the window. Distant cars, barking dogs, the sound of a world that kept moving while my own tilted sideways. If Kayla bought an apartment right after my parents sold their house, that meant something very specific, something ugly. I picked up my phone again and scrolled to Marcus, a friend from high school who worked in real estate. We hadn't spoken in months, but he'd always been the kind who liked a mystery. "Hey, Marcus," I said when he answered. "I need a favor." He laughed. "You sound like trouble." "Not trouble, just clarity. I need information on a property sale, my parents' old house. Can you look it up?" "Sure thing, send me the address." I texted it immediately. He promised to get back to me within a day. When I hung up, I went to the living room. My parents were sitting together on the couch watching some morning show. My mom was laughing again, her nails tapping against a mug of tea. "Morning, sweetheart," she said sweetly. "You look tired." "Didn't sleep much," I replied, thinking about what you told me. "Oh, don't," Dad said, waving his hand. "We'll get back on our feet. Things have a way of working out." He sounded so confident, so casual, that I almost believed him. But the image of Kayla's smiling face in front of that apartment wouldn't leave my head. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed. Marcus. "Got something," he said. His tone was different now, no trace of humor. "You were right to be suspicious." "Tell me." "Your parents sold the house 2 months ago." "Yes." I checked public records. It was a clean sale. The proceeds were split exactly in half. One half wired to your father's account. The other half went directly to a property purchased under the name Kayla Anderson. My grip on the phone tightened. "You're absolutely sure?" "I'm looking at the transaction now. Addresses, amounts, everything. I'll send the documents to your email." When the email arrived, I opened it immediately. My eyes scanned the numbers, the signatures. Half the house's worth gone spent on Kayla. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Instead, I sat there frozen, staring at the screen until the letters blurred. All those stories, the fake lawsuit, the crying, the helplessness, all of it had been a cover. They hadn't lost their home to injustice. They'd given it away. That evening, I didn't greet them when they came home. I didn't offer dinner. I just sat in the living room with the documents printed and folded neatly in my lap. Mom noticed first. "Why are you sitting there in the dark?" "Because we need to talk," I said quietly. Her smile faltered. About what? The house. Dad looked up sharply. What about it? I placed the papers on the coffee table between us. I know everything. You sold your house and bought an apartment for Kayla. There was no lawsuit. You lied to me. For a moment, neither spoke. Then my mother gave a small, incredulous laugh, as if I had just told a bad joke. Where did you get this nonsense? From real documents, I said flatly. You can check my email if you want. The room went still. My father exhaled through his nose, eyes darting to my mother. She looked at him, then back at me, and smiled that same rehearsed, sugary smile she always used when cornered. Sweetheart, she began, you have to understand. No, I cut her off. I understand perfectly. She flinched, her expression hardening. I took you in because I thought you were in trouble, because I felt sorry for you, but you didn't lose your house to a scam. You chose to give it to Kayla. We did what we thought was right for the family, Dad said suddenly, voice rising. For the family, I repeated bitterly. You mean for her? She's younger, Paula. She's about to get married. Mom said, her tone shifting to defensive. She needed a stable start. You already have a house. My mouth went dry. You sold your home for her and then lied to me to get a place to stay. Do you hear how insane that sounds? My mother's eyes flashed. Watch your tone. But I didn't lower my voice. If you want to stay here, you need to give me the other half of the money you kept from that sale. That's my condition. Dad's shoulders slumped. We can't. The money's gone. Gone, I asked coldly. Where? My mother straightened up, defiant now. We invested it. In a startup. Kayla's fiancé told us about it. He's helping us. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The words hung in the air like smoke. A startup, I repeated. You gave the rest of your savings to Kayla's boyfriend. He's not just her boyfriend, Mom snapped. He's a businessman. He's opened companies abroad. You wouldn't understand. You've never taken risks in your life. I stared at her, disbelief curdling into fury. And how long until this investment makes you rich? In a year, Dad said confidently. Maybe less. A hollow laugh escaped my throat. Good luck with that. They said nothing more, just stared back at me, unblinking, as if I were the unreasonable one. I stood up slowly. Then this conversation is over. Mom's jaw tightened. We'll move out soon, she said sharply. But you'll regret speaking to us this way. Maybe, I said, turning toward my room. But at least I'll sleep knowing I'm not the fool here. As I closed the door behind me, I caught a final glimpse of her face, cold, expressionless, and utterly unfamiliar. The house was quiet again, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that comes right before a storm. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my parents laughing in the kitchen. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamt everything, the confrontation, the lies, the absurd startup story. But when I walked out, they were sitting at the table, eating pancakes as if nothing had happened. Good morning, Mom said, brightly pouring syrup over her plate. I made breakfast. I stared at her. You're acting like last night didn't happen. Dad looked up calmly. Because we don't want to argue, Paula. You were emotional. We all were. Emotional. I repeated, disbelief rising in my throat. You lied to me. You scammed me into letting you live here. Mom set her fork down, her eyes narrowing. Scammed you. We're your parents. That doesn't make lying acceptable. She sighed dramatically. You've always been so rigid, so cold. Everything has to be logical with you, numbers, rules, conditions. Life doesn't work that way. No, I said quietly, it only doesn't work that way when you don't want to take responsibility. The air thickened. Dad muttered, we're just trying to survive, Paula. Then survive, honestly. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The ticking of the wall clock filled the silence between us. Then Mom stood up abruptly and started gathering dishes. You think you're better than us just because you're alone in your little house, divorced and bitter? Her words stung like acid. I'm not bitter, I said softly. Just tired. Tired of what she snapped. Helping your own family. You think this house of yours makes you some kind of saint? No, I whispered. But it's mine. And you've disrespected that since the minute you walked in. She froze mid-step. Her face tightened, then broke into an angry smile. We raised you. We gave you everything you have. You should be grateful. Grateful that you lied. The sound of porcelain shattering cut through the room. She had slammed a mug against the sink. Watch your tone, she hissed. Dad stood up, holding up his hands. Enough, both of you. But the years of silence between us had cracked open and the words wouldn't stop coming. You didn't lose your home. You chose to throw it away for Kayla, I said, voice trembling. You treat her like she's gold, and me like I'm invisible. Even now you think she deserves everything, while I'm just supposed to clean up after your mistakes. My mother's breathing grew rapid. Her hand twitched at her side. You always make yourself the victim, Paula. Always. Poor you, unloved, unappreciated. Maybe that's why your husband left. The blow landed sharper than I expected, not physically, not yet, but emotionally, straight to the chest. "Don't you dare bring him into this," I said, stepping closer. "Why not?" She spat. "He left because you're impossible, because you push everyone away, just like now." I could feel my pulse in my throat. I wanted to walk away to stay silent, but something inside me snapped. At least I don't destroy everyone around me and call it love. Her eyes blazed. In one swift motion, she stepped forward and slapped me hard across the face. The sound echoed in the small kitchen. For a second, I didn't move. My cheek burned. My father shouted her name, but it sounded far away. The only thing I could hear clearly was my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. When I finally met her gaze, I saw no regret, only fury, pride, and something else fear. Slowly, I straightened. "Get out." "What?" "Pack your things and get out of my house." Her lips parted in disbelief. "You can't be serious." "If you're not gone in an hour," I said, "I'll call the police." Dad stepped between us. "Paula, stop this. You'll regret it." "Try me." I pulled my phone from my pocket and started scrolling for the local precinct number. That broke the illusion. Mom's voice rose into a shriek. "You selfish, ungrateful girl. We sacrificed everything for you. School clothes, food on the table, and now you throw us out like garbage." My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed calm. "You didn't sacrifice for me. You gambled your own future and expect me to pay for it." Dad's face had turned pale. "Paula, please, she didn't mean..." But she was beyond reason. "You're a disgrace," she spat. "No wonder no man wants you. You'll die alone in this little box of a house." Her words sliced through me, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I turned the phone screen toward them. Last warning. The fury drained from her face, replaced by a cold mask. "Fine," she said through clenched teeth. "You'll see what it's like when your family abandons you." She stormed down the hall, dragging open drawers, slamming closet doors. My father followed, muttering apologies I didn't want to hear. I sat on the couch, motionless, as they packed their suitcases. Every crash of a closing drawer felt like the end of a chapter I hadn't realized I'd been writing my whole life. An hour later, the front door opened. My mother turned to glare at me one last time, her face stiff with rage and humiliation. "You'll regret this, Paula," she said. "One day you'll need us, and we won't be there." "Good," I said quietly. She slammed the door so hard the picture frames rattled on the wall. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door, the faint handprint still burning on my cheek. Then I sank onto the couch, the weight of everything crashing down at once. I didn't cry. I just sat there numb, realizing that my mother had done what my husband never did. She'd made me feel truly worthless. Hours passed before my phone rang. The screen lit up with Kayla's name. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was sharp and furious. "You're insane. You had no right to kick out Mom and Dad. Since they bought you an apartment," I said evenly, "they can stay with you. You know there's no room for them. And besides, having them here would ruin everything with Derek. He needs his space." I almost laughed. "Then maybe he can build them one with the money he scammed out of them." "Don't talk about him like that," she snapped. "You're just jealous. Jealous because you're divorced and I'm getting married." I didn't respond. "Say something," she yelled. "I hope you never have to find out what it's like to be betrayed by your own parents," I said quietly, then hung up. The screen went dark, and for the first time in years, the house was completely silent. It wasn't peace, but it was freedom. 2 months passed. I hadn't heard a single word from my parents or from Kayla. The silence was both strange and comforting, like the moment after a thunderstorm when everything is wet still and you're not sure if the sky is done punishing you yet. I went back to my routines: work, coffee, quiet evenings. Sometimes I'd catch myself glancing at the empty guest room and wondering if they were eating, if they were okay. Then I'd remind myself they had chosen their path. They had lied. They had slapped me literally and figuratively. My pity had limits. Then, one ordinary morning, while sipping my coffee, I turned on the local news. A male reporter's serious voice filled the room. "Authorities are searching for a man named Derek Mitchell, suspected of orchestrating multiple investment scams across several states." My mug froze halfway to my lips. A photograph appeared on the screen. Slick hair, expensive suit, charming smile. Kayla's fiancé. My blood turned cold. The reporter continued. "Mitchell allegedly operated under various business names, promising investors tenfold returns. Police believe he has fled the state." I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. Then, as if on cue, my phone started ringing. Aunt Patricia. "Betsy, I mean Paula, have you seen the news?" She burst out, her voice trembling. "Yes," I said. My voice sounded far away, detached. "That's Derek, isn't it?" "The same. The startup." It was fake, Paula. A pyramid scheme. He scammed dozens of people, including your parents and Kayla. The police are everywhere. He disappeared last week, took all the money, all the jewelry, even Kayla's engagement ring. I pressed my palm to my forehead. God. It gets worse, she rushed on. Kayla took out a huge loan for him. He said he needed urgent capital. She used her apartment as collateral. My chair screeched against the floor as I stood. How much? I don't know the exact amount, but enough to lose everything. And your parents? What about them? They sold their car and gave him the money too. He told them they'd double it in 3 months, and now he's gone. A long silence filled the line. I told them, I said softly. I told them not to trust him. I know you did. Aunt Patricia sighed. They wouldn't listen. They said you were jealous. I sat down again, pressing my fingers against my temples. The image of Derek's smile burned in my mind, the same smile Kayla had once bragged about, saying, "He's so charming, even Dad respects him." I should have seen it coming. I did see it coming. But the truth is, when people choose to believe a lie, nothing you say will save them. Patricia kept talking. I think they'll call you soon, Paula. They're desperate. I'm not answering, I said quickly. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I shouldn't have picked up, but curiosity habit, or maybe that last thread of hope, made me do it. Hello? Paula came, my mother's voice weak, trembling. It's me. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I could hear her breathing, the faint echo of a television somewhere in the background. We need your help, she said finally. I closed my eyes. Of course you do. Please, she continued, her voice breaking. Your father and I have moved into Kayla's apartment. We're in trouble. The loan payments are $5,000 a month, and if we don't pay, the bank will take her home. That's not my problem, I said evenly. There was a pause. How can you say that? Because you lied to me. You used me. You hit me. You made your choices, Mom. We made a mistake, she whispered. But you're our daughter. I was your daughter, I said quietly. You made that clear when you slapped me. Paula. No, I interrupted. You gave away your house for Kayla, your money to a con artist, and your dignity to greed. I warned you and you mocked me. Now you want help. We're family, she said softly. Families forgive. I felt something twist inside me, an echo of guilt of the little girl who once believed her mother could fix anything. But that little girl was gone. Then maybe you should ask Kayla, I said, my voice cold. She's the one you chose to save. She can't, Mom said in a choked whisper. She's not well. My stomach clenched. What do you mean? She's been crying for days. She barely eats. She keeps saying she's ruined everything. For the first time in months, I heard genuine pain in my mother's voice, but I couldn't tell if it was for Kayla or for herself. I'm sorry, I said, but I can't fix this for you. There was silence. Then quietly she said, You're no longer my daughter. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time staring at the blank screen. I thought I'd feel pain, maybe guilt, but all I felt was a strange, heavy calm, the kind that comes when the storm has already taken everything it could. A week later, Aunt Patricia called again. Did she reach out to you? Yes. She told me what she said, Patricia murmured. She's furious, but don't listen. You did the right thing. I exhaled. What's happening with them now? They're trying to pay the loan. Kayla's fiancé cleaned out every cent. Your parents are scrambling. They even asked me for money. Did you give them any? Absolutely not. They asked everyone in the family. Nobody's helping. They're on their own. I looked out the window, the city bathed in golden light. Somewhere out there, my family was drowning in the consequences of their own choices. For the first time, I didn't feel like the abandoned one. They had always chosen lies over truth, favoritism over fairness, greed over love. Now they were finally paying for it. I took a deep breath and turned off my phone. Whatever came next, it wasn't my burden anymore. A few quiet weeks passed. I didn't hear from my parents or Kayla, though Aunt Patricia occasionally sent me short updates. They're struggling, she'd text. Your dad's looking for warehouse work. Your mom's applied to grocery stores. Kayla's a mess. Each message felt like a small echo from a past I no longer wanted to visit. I read them, sighed, and went back to my tea. For once, my life was still. My little house finally felt like mine again. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. Grandma. Her voice was thin and tired, like she'd been crying. Paula, dear, I wanted to tell you something before you hear it from someone else. My heart sank. What happened? Your parents came to see me last week, she said softly. They were crying, begging. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. For what? For their inheritance. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. But you're still alive. A faint, sad chuckle. Yes, dear, I told them the same thing. But they said they were desperate. They said if I didn't give them their share, now the bank would take Kayla's apartment. My throat felt dry. Did you Give it to them? I did, she whispered. I couldn't watch them cry like that. I withdrew $50,000 from my savings. It's all I could manage. I leaned back in my chair, the ceiling above me spinning slightly. 50,000. That was half her life savings. Grandma's voice trembled. They promised they'd pay me back once things turned around. But Paula, I know they won't. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was an old tired sadness. You shouldn't have given them anything, Grandma. I know, dear, but when you're a mother, it's hard to watch your children drown, even when they jumped into the river themselves. That sentence stuck with me long after the call ended. 2 days later, Grandma called again. Her tone was more strained this time. Paula, I have to tell you something else. I braced myself. Go on. After I gave them their share, she said they came back the next morning. They asked me for your inheritance, too. My pulse quickened. They what? They said you wouldn't mind, that you wanted them to have it. I told them that money isn't mine to give, it's set aside for you. But they wouldn't take no for an answer. Your father said Paula doesn't need it. She's single. She's fine. We're saving the family. My stomach turned. They actually said that. I refused. Grandma continued firmly. I told them I wouldn't betray you. They got angry. Your mother started crying again, said I was favoring you. Then they left without saying goodbye. I haven't heard from them since. There was a long silence on the line. Grandma, I said quietly, I'm sorry they put you in that position. Don't be sorry, dear. I see things clearly now. They've let greed turn them into strangers. Her voice cracked. You did the right thing when you shut your door, Paula. I didn't understand before, but I do now. I blinked back tears. Thank you. We stayed on the phone for a while longer. She asked about work, about whether I was eating well. When we said goodbye, I promised to visit soon. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the faded grain of the wood, thinking about the cycle repeating itself, how my parents had once lectured me about honesty and hard work, and now they were begging their own mother for money that wasn't theirs to take. Somewhere in my memory, I could still see the version of them from years ago. Dad trimming the hedges, Mom calling us in for dinner laughter, spilling from the kitchen. That family felt like a dream that belonged to someone else. Over the next few weeks, the whispers began. Family members calling, texting, asking if I'd heard. My cousin Emily said, I don't mean to judge, but don't you think you should help them even a little? They're your parents. I laughed bitterly. They're adults who made reckless choices. They're not starving. They're just paying the price for their greed. But still, she pressed, your family. Family isn't a shield against consequences, I said flatly. They lied, manipulated, and even hit me. Tell me why that deserves my help. She didn't answer. A few days later, my uncle called. Paula, they're paying off the loan bit by bit, he said. They're miserable. Your dad's back problems are acting up. Your mom cries every day. Don't you feel guilty watching them struggle? Guilty, I repeated. No, I feel finished. There was a pause. You've changed. Maybe. Or maybe I just stopped letting their chaos define me. He sighed. They're still your parents. They were supposed to be, I murmured. But parents protect their children, not the other way around. When the call ended, I realized my hands were trembling, not from anger this time, but from release. Weeks turned into months. Aunt Patricia called again, giving me her regular update report. They're all working now, she said. Your dad's at a warehouse loading trucks. Your mom's at a grocery store bagging items. Kayla's juggling 2 jobs, waitress and call center. They're barely making ends meet. I said nothing. They still talk about you, she continued carefully. They blame you for not helping. They tell everyone you've become cold, heartless. I exhaled. Let them. People always need a villain to make sense of their own failures. There was a pause. You don't sound angry anymore. I'm not, I said. I just don't care. That night I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, watching the quiet street. The wind carried the faint scent of rain. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. A reminder that chaos always existed, even when you weren't looking. I thought of Grandma alone in her old house, $50,000 poorer. I thought of my mother's slap, of my father's silence, of Kayla's smug voice telling me I was jealous. They had each chosen the same road, and they had finally reached its end. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for walking away. Almost a year had passed since that morning when my parents first appeared at my doorstep, their suitcases stacked like silent weapons. Sometimes I still dream about that knock, the dull, urgent thudding that woke me from sleep and began everything. But in the dream, I never open the door. I just stand there listening until the knocking fades and I'm left in peace. Peace. That was something I'd finally started to understand. Life had slowly returned to a quiet rhythm. I went to work, came home cooked for one, watched the evening news, I even started writing again, short essays, half diary, half reflection about the strange shapes that family love can take. Some of them were gentle, most were not. One rainy afternoon, Aunt Patricia called. I hesitated before answering. Her updates were always a mix of pity and gossip. Paula, she began. I just wanted to let you know your parents are still working. Your dad's back is worse, but he refuses to quit the warehouse. Your mom's been promoted to cashier at the grocery. Kayla's exhausted. 2 jobs, no social life, no fiance. They're surviving. I nodded silently, watching the rain streak down my window. That's more than I expected. They still talk about you sometimes, Patricia added. They say you turned your back on them. I didn't, I said softly. I just stopped letting them walk over me. Patricia sighed. They don't see it that way. But your grandmother does. She tells everyone you were the only one with sense. That made me smile faintly. She's always been the only one with wisdom. We talked for a few minutes more about weather, groceries, nothing that mattered before hanging up. When the call ended, the rain had stopped, leaving the sky pale and clean. That night, I found myself digging through an old drawer, the one where I kept photographs. There was one of all of us from years ago. Me, Kayla, Mom. Dad, standing in front of our old house. Dad had his arm around Mom. Kayla was laughing, holding an ice cream cone. I was standing slightly apart, smiling politely the way I always did. I ran my fingers over the photo, tracing the younger versions of faces that now felt foreign. I remembered the day it was taken, how Mom had yelled at me minutes before for spilling juice on my dress, and how she'd instantly switched to cheerful perfection when Dad raised the camera. It had always been like that. Performances. Smiles for the outside world, tension for the inside. I put the picture back. For a moment I thought about writing to them. Not an apology, just a message. Something simple like, I hope you're okay. But as soon as the idea appeared, it dissolved. Because the truth was, I didn't hope they were okay. I hoped they had learned. And deep down, I knew they hadn't. A few weeks later, I went to visit Grandma. Her small house smelled of lavender and dust. She was sitting by the window, knitting slowly, her hands thinner than before. Paula, she said warmly, her face lighting up. You came. Of course, I said, kissing her cheek. I missed you. She patted my hand. You look better, lighter. I feel lighter, I admitted. We talked for hours about small things, recipes, neighbors, a new bakery that had opened down the street. Eventually she sighed and said, Your parents came again, last month. I closed my eyes briefly. What did they want this time? They didn't ask for money, just forgiveness. My heart gave a small, involuntary flutter. And did you give it? I told them forgiveness isn't mine to give, it's yours. I stared at her. What did they say? Your mother cried. Your father didn't. He just looked tired. They said they wished they could turn back time. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I whispered, It's too late. Grandma nodded slowly. Sometimes it has to be. When I left her house that evening, the sun was setting, painting the sky in soft golds and reds. I stood on her porch for a while, letting the light hit my face. It felt warm, alive. That night, I wrote a letter. I didn't plan to send it. Maybe it was just something I needed to say out loud to no one in particular. Dear Mom and Dad, I used to think that love meant forgiveness, that no matter what someone did, family was family. But love isn't about letting people hurt you and calling it loyalty. You taught me how to give, but you never taught me how to stop giving when it hurts. I learned that on my own. I hope you find peace, but not the kind that comes from pretending nothing happened. I hope it's the kind that comes after you've faced what you did to yourselves, to me, to Kayla. I don't hate you, but I also don't need you. Paula. I folded the letter neatly, placed it in a small box, and tucked it away in my desk drawer. Maybe one day I'd burn it, or maybe I'd keep it forever as proof that I'd finally said what I needed to. Weeks later, Aunt Patricia texted me, one last update. They're still working hard. They're quieter now. Kayla doesn't talk about Derek anymore. Your mom's health isn't great, but she's managing. They stopped asking for help. Maybe they finally understand. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back. Good. Maybe that's the start of something real. I set the phone down and looked toward the front door. The same door they had once walked through carrying lies and luggage, the same one I'd shut on them months ago. The late evening light filtered through the curtains, golden and calm. Maybe one day they'd knock again. Maybe they never would. Either way, I knew what I'd do. I'd take a breath and decide if opening that door would cost me my peace. And if it did, then I'd leave it closed. Because sometimes closing a door isn't cruelty, it's survival.